Hello, Americans. Trinity College. There's a guy. They recorded capacity, demonstrated, confirmed for me. They have people involved with a Joshua Stryker, with former director of the FBI, Robert Luskin, and a whole bunch of other countries. And there's a guy who looks just like Sean Puffy Combs, P. Diddy, with involved with them, with the Joshua Stryker who put fake things recorded, capacity, demonstrated, confirmed by my campus, and sequence shifting roles, identity theft, fraud, slanders between campuses through time, timed collusions with the FBI director and a whole bunch of other countries, people involved with him with the state judicial branch offices and corrections offices. Hyper additionally, where how a breaching method already used collusion/S as evidence with names on all sides of criminal and civil cases, their lawyers, their family members, their sources, names at and next to the crime scenes, relative body dumping spots, roles with overt criminal enterprises and private ones, and terrorists, even when they're not involved in the cases. For example, through uses of radical and extremism that everybody missed. Even Judge Napolitano, even President Trump and President Obama, because they are, for example, leaders of people are only allowed to be above locations, areas, and states where a breaching method already forced, tricked, hurt, and persuaded them before religious messengers. And we'll show one of the proofs of it is even if that was made up, there are proofs from off campuses. It's actually recorded, but we're not being allowed to speak about what's recorded because part of the reason it's gotten away with, like for example, Wethersfield Police, and then hyper additionally with the state judicial branch offices and waiting forensics with state police families, interstates, and a whole bunch of other countries, FBI, CIA, and roles with all natures of campuses. They have been used remotely, criminally foreign influence. Oh, that's debatable. In other words, they're changing and faking what people say about predicate acts, World Trade Center predicate acts. Channel 3 News fake conversations with me, intercities and intra-cities with people who were in classes with me, who have recorded collusions with people that planted evidence on all sides of my house, people I never even saw on my street. They had to hide live progressions. And these are also with people I never even saw in my class, running into hide live progressions on Facebook. Hide motivations, hide all kinds of things that are just became the phenomenon of recorded. They had things confirmed to me on Facebook too, relative to murders and things like that. There are murders and reported. There are proofs that it was a murder, or even if it wasn't reported that way, the way they reported it, I think it was reported a murder, an untimely death on one of the streets off of Two Rod Highway, which is increasingly tied to untimely deaths. And strangers who sought me out to make recorded, confess, demonstrate, confirm collusion/S with the predicate acts with facts and methods/S. Manifest as an identity theft, fraud, slander, collusion/S. For example, relative to black people's whites of eyes. And why none have said, all rise. Relative how we can discern this predicate acts with facts method, replacing what our founders and what nature communicated about how a breaching method reassigned what black people's whites of eyes communicate by and as nature, when nature is not only itself as criminal insidiousness nature, as nature shows us. Nature shows us too. I'm not even a lawyer. We could use nature to show how one of the things, why there's a witch trials place next to Webb House, now renamed the Webb Stevens Museum in Old Wethersfield, Connecticut. And I'm sorry for anybody, the people there or next to it. The only reason if this puts any kind of, I'm being forced. I asked you guys to get it on paper. They lie about sequence already and motivations. They have to screen their motivations. But this is at countries A through Z. Forgiveness is also because they're lying about what they think when people speak. But I'm only allowed to speak about for me. So when I speak about World Trade Center attack, predicate acts, they have people, and you just can't stop talking in life, especially there's a whole bunch of other natures. There are murders and untimely deaths and use /S of them, collusion /S, recorded, and in a path relative to where and to how me and others have been tortured if we speak honestly about how things like World Trade Center attack, having to speak about things because of that. When the World Trade Center attack happens and you notice evidence tied /S tied to it, it's depressing, but you have to speak about it. If you go to a therapist to speak about that, those locations are used to fake transcripts. Totally make them up. It's recorded. There are means to discern that from here. These are also people that already had collusion /S where all sides of criminal and civil cases, their families, their sources, their neighbors, their conjunctions, their names with their campuses, overt criminal enterprises, private ones, terrorists, at the same time with the same self-valued sequence shifts in the courts in interbranch, foreign and domestic as they were actually shared. Now one has cared. A bunch of people next to Trinity College in Hartford, Connecticut, and in Central Connecticut State University in New Britain, Connecticut, all in other cities of Connecticut to have collusions with people who planted evidences on my street, fake ties, fake natures of ties to me from other areas. That's evidence. Robert Rodriguez is one of the ones who was a collusion. I never saw a Robert Rodriguez on a campus in my life. I don't know where he went to campus. He has collusions with people all along Route 3 and conjunctions to it and to that. And people like associated with places and locations with him, involved with the borders, with other border countries, their own against their own, and our own are against our own, with their differences, rackets, cover-ups, because they were relative to how they were child abused at campuses A through Z, sickly, non-distinctly. And that is self-valued, even though it hurts them and everyone. But everyone blamed what it caused and nature's demonstrations of it on other things, others ourselves, right where, how, and when the breaching method did that. That breaching method replaced right from the communications of James Madison, of our founders, plural, who with him directed us to understand how and why not to entertain anyone other than James Madison, pretended as one of the known names of a founder. To do that, as that we have only allowed to hear or have heard done, it is also used to sense for the breaching method that replaced where the only correct answer is James Madison's plan and the identity of those founders, plural, that we don't know the names of, and how they had and why they had to counter extort and force people to break the really, really, really crazy torture, extortion, slavery method laws to an extent. But why and how those people, and with the breaching method, they still forced our founders, plural, and James Madison to have to leave even slavery entrenched, even abuses of every woman's difference, formally, right, where we could all discern it and go after it the way when no one wanted it. But see, all those things, if you speak up about them, or were sense doing it for other natures of things, in other words, all whole industries had already been sustained, reliant upon the Constitution's abridgments, those deeper than the foundation of this country. George Washington came to Old Wethersfield, Connecticut, right before the last battle of the Revolutionary War. And he had to stay over at the Webb House. It had no the on the name. In Webb House, now renamed the Webb Stevens Museum. And next to it, not far from it, right there, is a witch trials place. And even if that was completely made up, if we examine the laws at the time, the way our founders communicated for us too. See, about that, James Madison detailed about how our founders, plural, had wanted nothing to do with slavery, had wanted nothing to do with It's way worse than women's suffrage. I'm not going to call it that because that was used also to have people like get behind an issue where they're measured and maintained, entertaining with the breaching method causing and keeps when people are in the nature of debate. Entertaining, you can't entertain that and overcome. It's hyper sophistication over where and how they made legislation at countries A through Z, the syntax, the function of the human species body, of individual bodies, by that which is generating all group differences, like male and female, like two eyes. All exceptions come with the demonstration /s of the same thing. It is generating all group differences too. Or it demonstrates that we are using or have been used or had used a bridged system /s. This is a predicate acts with facts stacking method /s between the campuses, where the slightest bit of evidence was used and is used criminally. The breaching method shows them they need to. The breaching method shows each age and nature of fact, human nature, like the names of the people, the sciences, names of American history. They have to use their knowledge of good and evil, for example. In other words, they have to use their knowledge out of sequence, use it to pretend integrity of thought or things that are debatable that are not, to pretend things that are not debatable that are true always. Like, for example, why and how there are plural founders, we know that because they had to counter-extort the other founders. But we don't know which ones were the counter-extorted ones. Because the counter-extorted ones, we know that they also forced slavery entrenched. But we don't. But we also know that was forced by a breaching method, a hyper-foreign, because it was distinctly the northern colonies and the southern colonies had roles with even slavery only permitted. And then America's founders were born. There was a huge rap trap deeper then and over then and wider than, more vast than any nature of unity or independence that could make a voice. And then it's sensed. We are in a semi-ancient trap from before religious messengers. It is more probable, for example, that what the devil is about is cipher to be deciphered about how there is a hyper-archetypal criminal enterprise. And having it's a human fact, human nature breaching method that nature itself demonstrates is a predicate acts with facts method /s. It's a singular method that made collusions plural, that made collusion /s plural, only permitted. More and more natures of roles that can't afford to have discern. That's singular, the hyper-singular simple collusion. It's manifest in everyone's fact, human nature, qualities, aspects, and nature. When people say peace, we know we all want peace, but we want hyper peace. Nature shows us, well, no one knows what hyper peace is. So what are you talking about? Nature shows us there's a difference between criminal and seditious natures of peace. Nature shows us our founders' communications about the really how and why the suburbs are manifest the way they are. The suburbs were designed to cause negative value nature progressions, acts, and natures, and to sustain conditions while being a theater, a landscape theater, to sustain all victims / hyper victims of that too. To sustain needs, it only means to cause positives out of negatives, make positives out of negatives, is if the self-value collusion /s with making criminal insidiousness natures of positives out of negatives, and having to defend that syntactically, therefore physically, where and how defenses of that syntactically, therefore physically, can't defend itself from right where and how we have to. The most important thing with every imposition upon everyone There are criminal insidious natures of positive treatments and negative treatments and differences treatments simultaneously, where multi-front sickly distinctly, this breaching method hurt Native Americans, hurt Americans that came to be Americans different ways, but as Americans. And we are forced to operate these names of countries A through Z, where and how only A through Z only remembered being and having been built as identities of integrity reliant upon other things, others, or selves, blamed for things the breaching method caused, and keeps as that collusion/S to hide behind and through. It knew that we had replaced what our founders had directed us to communicate for each age of fact treatment nature, and where and how it has replaced, and where and how that has stayed. It has been as hyper additional collusion/S again too, where all people could only fathom motivations narratives. And like even though the difference between one motivation seen or not, it's not about that. There's also a hyper addition because a lot of the motivations that are not real, they just and everyone counters it wrong. In other words, and truths are used for lies with it, with motivations. Because the breaching method, right where it's a scientific value replaced, right from the communications of our founders and from nature itself, shows us. One of those things, all those affronts on women, on black pupils, whites of eyes, on native, all those different subjects with that, they're all commonly at the same time value as a human fact treatment nature breaching method parts. A multi-front role with other things, others with role with use, role multi-front use roles with use/S of other things, others or selves, blamed by the people operating the names of countries A through Z as a certain type of victim/hyper victim, maintained methodically in ways unfathomed. Because where the beginning of perception of it starts, it goes through all sides of cases in the interbranch and foreign. They're all already stayed grouped since before our founders were born, directed to hide how they're actually grouped with campuses. Therefore, the difference of on and off it too. But there's also a hyper foreign involved that needs things like criminal foreign influences to stay timed collusion/S with the interbranch that it used and uses remotely. And the differences of guilt between the three. The Westwood witch trials are about next to that place, no matter if the entirely made up. It's about, in other words, George Washington, he did chop down the fake branches of government in Wethersfield, Connecticut, right before the last battle of the Revolutionary War, enabling that phase of becoming a country out of nowhere. While it was against the rules, too many rules on and off the books. It was the sense and sensibilities, not just the three crazy branches of government that had only been known to be criminally foreign influenced. And nature was in demonstrations of that. But that was only permitted. They were in fact treatment nature enslaved. Oh, but they were the wealth. They were fact treatment nature enslaved. They would want you to know this. Plus, James Madison detailed about how and why. If anyone spoke up about any type of those rights, like that's why we're still everyone speaking about types of rights and leaving about how the breaching method set it up like that, so we wouldn't be able to speak about that nature of constitution unabridged. The predicate acts with facts method/S. I'm not even a lawyer. We have means to discern hyper evidentially recorded already all sides of cases, interbranch, intelligence tied to them, at the same time in news. Names that next to all natures of crime scenes, body dumping spots, and hyper additionally state opposite. There was this worse with it the whole time, but there were our collusion/s that we could discern. Same thing at and next to the World Trade Center in Manhattan, involved with the attack that morning, other ways short term before it, and since. And then people take that which I said so far, and they go fishing with truths and self-value collusion/s because the same names rolls with like a DeMoro family. I don't know if he was in my fifth grade class or not, and I never had a personal conversation with a Mr. Abruzzi. He tried to make it look like a fake exception. Was no exception because he just said, do a mace for a Joe DeMoro. And it was a class like it was like one of the times that we weren't in the class. so that people were talking. But, I never had communications with people in the class. And then he did it because this is people increasingly tied to a body dumping spot. That was my fifth grade class in 1986. I mean, 1986. In 1985, there was a South Cibiello is increasingly his neighbors too, tied to different body dumping spots years apart, and with FBI Director Robert Luskin and various whiting forensics ties and roles, inter-services and things like that, with the state judicial branch offices and corrections offices and conjunctions to it and to that. As, for example, along Route 3, junctions to that is Hangdog Lane, where it runs into Hangdog, a two-route highway, if you take that as a straight line from Route 3. It has something to do with that. People that in that area Brian Bonin sought me out to record, confess, demonstrate, confirm. He has roles with foreign and domestic people there to confirm also. He confirmed this. There's a Steven Stocko. I don't know where he lives or where he or ever. He was put in a math class with me my senior year. And there were people that did that through criminal and who were already involved with, my campus had already recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed before that, years before that. There are people involved with from off campuses, involved with organized crimes, federal evidences crimes, identity thefts, frauds, slanders, sequence ship planting. These are also people who have roles with the World Trade Center attack. I don't know what's his name. And these are increasingly, they're people with the corners of the street of a principal child abuser who also has something involved with that, with a whole bunch of different countries, and people involved with a Daryl Chandler and a Robert Rodriguez and Facebook. Facebook has collusions with crime scenes and all sides of criminal and civil cases, foreign and domestic, relative to worse than behavior racketeering, worse than war crimes. Not even a lawyer, too. Again, we have lawyers recorded originally still, all sides of cases. And the interbranch have the same sequence shifts, the same relative delusions, too. The experts on psychiatry have delusions that I'm not even a doctor, but they have them discernible, where they have collusion/s with our as roles replacing with James Madison and our plural founders left declassified. Again, about why, for example, about James Madison's plan. This is replaced also at the founding locations across America, relative to where and to how we could discern this breaching method with behavior, racketeering, worse than war crimes. And we're going to observe in the background of rap videos. See the people stacking in those buildings? This is a breaching method that knew and measured and maintained. People are communicating other than our founders communicated for us to communicate about how and why the suburbs were designed to have nature demonstrate negative value nature progressions, acts, and natures, and people needs to adapt to it because there's no longer ways for people to feed themselves. The entire ocean water is polluted. There are forever chemicals aka whoever they named it that. Different ones. In other words, PFAS, PFAS, I believe. And then we have to go, and this is the research. The research locations have roles with multiple natures of organized crimes. And with use slash and collusion slash S with use slash S with the difference. The differences of guilt as collusion slash S with those natures of organized crime. Right where and how we have these black people's whites device to discern it. You learn it well. Because there's a predicate action facts method that nature in that itself and our founders themselves, even though we only know the name of James Madison, thank God, because them plural through him, that's why they told us, that's why they declassified, only refer to James Madison as one of the known founders. You guys frame our founders for slavery when you do other. You guys are used to sense for the breaching method. But I don't realize that no one had free speech and that everyone's speech was being measured. And, also why you have delusions that are relative. So we need experts on delusions that are capable here. But they're not. That whole industry is involved with all kinds of natures of organized crimes. And they're increasingly involved with the people speaking on crimes. Collusions with all kinds of organized crimes. Predicate acts with facts, method slash S. Differences of guilt, leaving out the breaching method's roles. This breaching method is manifest at countries A through Z with names of people, sciences, only capable of discerning hyper-criminal foreign influences as criminal foreign influences. That's why people don't like America. The people attacking our founders for owning slaves, they're framing our founders with the people defending our founders as other than James Madison and the plural unknown founders, exactly the way they knew they would. But you guys are preventing us free speech as collusion with CBS. Channel 3 News has identity theft, fraud, slanders with a whole bunch of people against me. They attached me fake transcripts with the interbranch at the same time. Since I was a kid, there were collusion slash S with all kinds of natures of crime scenes. And with the people next to each of my campuses, they'll tell you when you ask properly, just repeating fake things about me. And exploited right where they have the Russians, Ukraine, Korea, Italy. Psychiatry has to go. Black pupils, right through world wars. These little delusions rot, not bags. Replacing what's actually recorded. The beginning of the Old Testament, for example. A self-biased sequence. How come no one ever brought up the part that says only defend right here? Where the names of the people, the sciences will come together. And the part that comes before it. You know why? Because everyone's valuing the sciences having been and stayed individually grouped and together, voicings for humanity as criminal insidious natures of positive treatments, negative treatments, difference, therefore names use slash S like humanities. You guys never heard someone speak for humanity? It takes pantheism too. It too. And that's not about many gods. That's about how it is functional. If you have a name like pantheism, you're speaking about the invisible but still discernible. You're speaking about something with a name. Pantheism is about not being led by an ism, but by how it is functional. How the self, nature's self, therefore yours, is distinctly hyper-invisible but still discernible, distinctly from how it is invisible but still discernible. And English was revealed to be taught this way. And here many pray, not just because of natural reasons, but per reasons that are only natural. Because of criminal insidiousness nature / hyper-criminal insidiousness nature. Thank God I'm not a lawyer. Because the names of the people, the sciences, at the gate. They are sent self-value pollution / that's replacing what they had means to discern is wrong since you guys were little kids. Show means needs. The breaching method showed everyone how to speak. These styles of logic that put an oath and instead of the Constitution unabridged. Put readings of statutes and precedents, state collusion / S with wire mail crime methods. That even the branches of government have self-value collusion / S with. They were child abused. Where and how it counts, too. So, even if that wasn't P. Diddy, but I believe it was, in 2011 at Trinity College. See, the way they have the networks also have celebrities and the alternative media. And the social media has collusions with identity theft, fraud, slander, predicate acts with facts, methods / S. And with former director of the F.B.I, Robert Luskin. There's also a guy who looked just like James Comey, even if it wasn't him. New Britain Superior Court, Hartford Courts, and the Connecticut District Court have collusions at West Hartford locations. Eric Burgess and others recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed, also with people on my street that were influenced to collusions with child abusers, leaders of kids, proven and more then and now, years apart. Proven years apart. One's already proven. There were more then and now involved. And there are retired Wethersfield police chiefs and their intimate ties. And this also rolls with everyone's sense and sensibilities in speaking about privacy. They're already painted in needing to hide their sequence shifts, people and their actual motivations, and collusions with names that planted evidence in sequence shifts on my house. Jonathan Maiano has a bunch of people at the Britain Spirit Court involved with sequence shifts with my neighbors, and people involved with multiple proven child abusers of leaders of kids, and more then and now involved. And the interbranch have been forging and switching names because they know this is true. These are also medical offenders of kids and people with the houses and businesses next to Hartford Hospital who have been collusion / S intercities with campuses and with all sides of crime scenes. And all ages and natures of investigations, investigators use remotely criminally foreign influence tactically delusion draw. One person, in other words, forgiveness is to focus on the predicate acts with facts, like the World Trade Center attack once. And don't go fishing with what people say about it with evidences, including the interbranch. Don't change or fake what people say about it, because they use the right to lie where they don't have the right to lie. And they're offensively preventing me free speech since before the World Trade Center attack. Former director of the F.B.I, Robert Luskin, is increasingly making confessions, demonstration, recorded, confirmed, even though I never had a word of conversation with him. His co-defendants and his lawyer recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed, next to Fox Connecticut News, and with their family members and neighbors. They have collusions with a bunch of people at the campuses I went, and with names next to it involved with identity theft, fraud, slander. There's a whole bunch of people tied to them planting predicate acts on my street. And with Wethersfield police that fake conversations and ties to me when I was a kid and now as an adult too. One's named Mendez too, with all natures of differences like black, white, Puerto Rican, Italian, collusions with that, intercultural and intracultural identity theft, fraud, slander, cover-ups. This breaching method knew that collusions with itself would be demonstrated by nature itself. And one of the ways it would demonstrate it is as an identity theft, fraud, slander methods, three ways manifest. Because of how nature's identity, its identity relationship to itself, and the only increasing value of that is inseparable from every finite part, distinctly from, but also while non-distinctly, from how it is grouped active parts, distinctly from how it is the simultaneous, from how it is the cipher simultaneous. We are shown that we are distinct from the other species bodies, but we are also non-distinct from them, and we are simultaneous with them. But also for that which is further neither us nor them, but while it is all things anyway, the identity of nature itself. to teach about how it is it's showing us that it is functional, being hyper invisible but still discernible, distinctly from how it is itself, as the invisible but still discernible. And with a third identity of invisible but still discernible part of itself, that identity of forever nature that has and is the value of the past, of that which is active and are grouped here now, and of that which we, and of the future that is value here now. And as it shows us this to an extent discernible, as it shows us and has shown us the value of seasons past, to show us the value of them not even here yet, even if they never get here, to show us their increasing value, which comes with how nature shows us it is functional too. A special difference. Earth's a special difference, not just as a phenomenon, but as a tool, where we are part of what we could use to discern how to reveal evolution's fruits, gifts, means here out of nowhere. Evolution's per nature's identity by using how nature shows us its identity to an extent, which comes with its complete identity relationship to itself, and the only increasing value of that here, or as it forced from here, the moment we were, are, or will be using systems abridged from its own as abridged concepts. That's why we're supposed to get the Constitution unabridged. Nature itself shows us, because we need to deal with details properly. You have our founders framed, pretending it's debatable while censoring for the breaching method, dependent upon criminally foreign influence, fact, cheap nature, quality aspects of nature, not just in the books in the school book depository at the time of the assassination of one of our presidents / chiefs. You guys can't even afford to have mandated law followed by the people who are the law, because the differences of guilt of them. In other words, forgiveness, because they're where and how we can discern the breaching method is right where and how there are collusions with overt criminal enterprises and the people countering them, with terrorists and the people countering that. Oh, because that's why I believe, but that's just your belief. No, it's recorded with the predicate acts with facts method /S. You guys are preventing mandated law with the World Trade Center attack, January 6th treatments. You guys are preventing. The president wanted to have a debate about. See, they're making the process. Oh, that was the process. They were messing up the process. Per president, we're supposed to take our president / chief's word. He said that Mr. Pence was supposed to stop the thing so they could debate what was going on with the fact treatments. And before that, if you say a little bit of but since before that, every year since the World Trade Center attack, there are collusion /S self-value too, and right where no one self-values it. So they make motivations to explain that, right where and how the breaching method needs them too. You guys are jumping to people's business dishonestly. Oh, because he's online. The Weathersfield police attached me to fake conversations with them as a kid and as an adult. They have digital crimes with the FBI themselves. Right through administrations, they have used remotely criminally foreign influence, tactically delusions raw. They want and need to have blame used wrong to leave out the breaching method. Well, why are you blaming them? I'm just saying that it came through them. There were collusion /S too, with worse. That's why you need to focus on the predicate acts. Get me off the fake conversations with WFSB. Increasingly, WFSB has people with the World Trade Center attack and with the Connecticut Judicial Branch offices involved with them planting evidences of identity theft, fraud, slanders, and with databases used remotely criminally born influence with foreign and domestic all along Route 3. They'll tell you this when asked properly. Watch the wire crime acts and methods, and people associated with like Weathersfield Pizza House has all kinds of people involved with identity theft, fraud, slanders with them, and they sought me. I never saw. I never saw a Maria Pazia on a Weathersfield campus in my life. And Steven Stocco, I never partook with the bullying of him by a Ray Colo and a Paul Zano. They have collusions, planting evidences, interstates with a Steven Stocco and with people with Central Connecticut State University involved with planting predicate acts on my street from other locations. And at the campuses, I went intercities with the F.B.I. Director Robert Luskin, involved also with Central Connecticut State University, with the Dean Judd and his kids. These are people involved with the border countries and border states and rules with differences where they can't be able to deal with that because you had already invested. Schools trained you how to blame other things other than themselves. But with the breaching method, played with differences and only allowed collusion /s specifically to keep it now. Everyone's preventing mandated law, everyone and pretending other. They're keeping people's mouths shut too with faking crimes. That's recorded. They're out here. They're changing digital evidences. Whiting Forensics has all kinds of collusion /s with foreign and domestic medical families and state police families that hold and FBI. All these different natures of police forms are used remotely, criminally foreign influence with overt criminal enterprise, private ones, terrorists at the same time. Oh, but that's because we're supposed to be like that. Get them off the fake conversations with me with WFSB Channel 3 News, but these are Fox. The same people are next to Fox Connecticut News with all kinds of systems corruption. In other words, you guys don't know how to speak about value /s or nature. All exception, nature come with demonstration /s of the same thing /s. And increasingly, people who make confessions about the World Trade Center attack, they had time collusions with and as people next to the campuses I went that are all tied to a DeMoro family on Valley Crest Street, and people that are involved with them with federal evidences crimes acting tied to it, identity theft, fraud, slanders. Like a John DeMoro too is further with people with old Weathersfield, with retired mayors and their family members' intimate ties, and neighbors, collusions with overt criminal enterprises, private ones, and syntax with sexual and medical offenders of kids, proven and further recorded, and with the FBI Director Robert Luskin involved with them with a Ruth, and involved with them with the World Trade Center attack. They said it's a Mendez police family is with them, and people involved increasingly with body number spots and murders, and with my fifth grade teacher, Mr. Pruzzi, with recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed by people at Central Connecticut State University, collusions with people from Weathersfield, Connecticut, with people who tied that with Central Connecticut State University, interbranch and foreign. They have collusions, all kinds of identity theft, fraud, slanders, indifferences, rackets, roles. On manifest throughout the states and throughout the countries, a whole bunch of styles, needs, and nature, speaking about politics and things. Appears to be politics because that's one of the things where they blame other things other than themselves on things, right, where there are collusions as criminal and citizens natures of styles of quality aspects of fact-cheating nature, like pretending things that are debatable that are not, while pretending things that are true always simultaneously are not true always. You guys have our founders framed, not one has trained vaccines. So please, someone get them on paper. Raise apples, people. Rap. All genres are rap. I've been begging you guys for a long time to get me a response for the interbranch forging and switching names and stacking collusions with the World Trade Center attack, including remote uses of America's name and of Saudi's name, that both sides have collusions with us at the same time, or worse. Let's all rehearse. Boxing, fix the worse than just fake news. And you guys are making it worse and make your guilt when you just won't follow simply mandated law. That's why the president gets mad at you and make it harder to deal with the criminal, not just criminal foreign influences. And you make the breaching method force things like criminal foreign influences to be blamed wrongly more and more to make them keep real more and more. There are collusions at hospitals and prisons with crime scenes and with overt criminal enterprises and private ones and with their whole family members, their neighbors, tied to them, whole careers. Thank God everyone's guilty at the same time. Prepare your mind, prepare your brain for mind who disbelieves. Get them off the fake, the interbranch switching name sequences, putting fake things in databases, and confessions are manifest. This breaching method, the proverbial devil, had countries A through Z, the people operating them, making confessions to it without anyone realizing, because they forced, hurt, and tricked, persuaded people to blame other things or others wrongly for things that it caused. And they didn't know what to do. And then the people had to counter that. And they were also blaming other things, others ourselves properly for things, but leaving out the breaching methods rolls with it, and with the simultaneous tactical degradation of that inherent to, active to, and progressive to the quality aspects and nature of the names of the people of the sciences. Therefore, further and further of us all, the law who disbelieves. This is not just to prevent. This is not for just. Also, the agencies are recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed, offensively pretending they believe people are being political when they try to defend either a Republican or a Democratic candidate or president, and or when they attack them. And this is also people are attacking everyone else because you pay attention what's actually recorded at the campuses. You have the collusions with people pretending to be against things like the sexual harassment collusion /S with people regarding transsexuals with the campuses and identity theft fraud slanders. They have those people involved with their doctors with all kinds of natures of organized crimes that can be used to show that the subject's framing as they want them framed. They also have collusions with the Britain Superior Court with people with that, also at corners of streets, where and how that's relative. And I only know an extent of it, but part of it I realize about that, I know more than themselves. And they said it's with the Peruta family. If they pretended to know me, in other words, in Rocky Hill, I had no kind of communications with him, no verbal communications with him. If they pretended other, that's wrong, that's fake. And he has roles with former director of the F.B.I. Robert Luskin's lawyer, co-defendants, family members, a whole bunch of people tied to them, with Wethersfield police chiefs retired, and their intimate ties and roles with Elm Streets in Rocky Hill and Wethersfield that are conjunctive to the state judicial branch offices, increasingly involved with people with wire crimes, mail crimes, foreign and domestic military, people involved with the World Trade Center attack, with Oliveri family too. Also at the Elm Street in Rocky Hill, corner of Route 3 too. Since years before the Mazzucato Bakery was there. The retired police chiefs had people that were putting fake things in databases between the campuses, but the differences of guilt of themselves or other countries, that is also exploited. They already have collusions with all sides of criminal and civil cases, the interbranch and foreign at the same time, and the news at the same time. So to keep people in the future incapable of affording to have discerned how really to counter what really most exploited. Like, for example, we're in the people in the background of rap videos in New York City. What really maintains overt criminal enterprises, private ones, the worst. Therefore, and the worst use /S of them, though, because that's what motivates it. Those courts have, and police forms in New York City have roles of more natures of predicate acts and methods of crimes, collusion slash S, because relative to how they were child abused to those same campuses, even if they came from another state, sickly non-distinctly too. Campuses A through Z have replaced what our founders communicated for us to understand, inseparable from every subject, but it is replaced. Our pace, some shadow box, some rest. So many ways I tell it best. Boxings. Bear your mind.